Dr. Gnaka Lagoké holds a PhD in public policy and development from Howard University in Washington, D.C. in the United States. Currently assistant professor in history, focusing on world, African, and African American history, and Pan-Africana Studies at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania in the United States. He is a specialist in African and global geopolitics, Africa and international development, and his research interests include comparative politics, international justice, Pan-Africanism, the Ubuntu philosophy, the question of reparation, and the Ubuntu Corporate Social Responsibility. Promotes a new dispensation of Pan-Africanism, which stands upon the Ubuntu philosophy. Dr. Gnaka Lagoké is the chairman of the scientific committee of the 9th Pan-African Congress. As a political analyst, he has operated on several international news outlets such as Deutsche Welle of Germany, RFI of France, and Voice of America of United States, as well as Russia Today, Hispana TV, Australian Broadcast Corporation, Democracy Now!, Al Jazeera, and many others. Dr. Lagoké is the author of the book Laurent Gbagbo's Trial and the Indictment of the International Criminal Court, A Pan-African Victory. He is fluent in English, French, and Spanish. Hello there, my name is Oral Ofori. Welcome to your favorite human interest chat show, #The African Dream. Today, we have for our very special guest, Professor Gnaka Lagoké. Professor, welcome to #The African Dream. It was such a pleasure meeting you at the Accra Reparations Conference in Ghana, West Africa. And we thank you again for making time to join us to have this chat on reparations and as it affects Africa. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, Oral Ofori.
Thank you, sir. So, Prof, you were at the inaugural Accra Reparations Conference where respective African countries gathered to call for reparations. Some of the major reasons behind that call included historical injustices, economic inequity, intergenerational trauma, restoration of cultural heritage, and investment in future development, among other things. Further justify this call for reparations.
Yeah, okay. Before I try to answer the question, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the Ghanaian government and to the President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, to organize that conference, which was supported by many African countries and endorsed by the African Union. And as you know, the question of reparation, like the question of Pan-Africanism, there are subversive ideas according to the Europeans. So for a president to take the lead and to take the initiative, we have to give him credit. We have criticized some of his actions. For this one, we have to give him credit. And I would like to congratulate him and commend him for putting together that conference, which, by the way, was coordinated by the Excellency Amoa Tun, who is representing Ghana in Addis Ababa. Yeah, so when we, unless you think somebody is not a human, then you can say that the person does not deserve reparation. So we've seen over and over throughout centuries that when some people receive a kind of damage and then they've been endured some trauma or some injustices, the idea, the notion of reparation is part of cultures across the globe. And then therefore, because of subsequent and then successive systems of exploitation that Africans and the people of African descent have suffered, it is normal, it is logical for those who have suffered the system to say, you know what, we too deserve reparations. The Japanese got some reparation in the United States, and the president of Ghana spoke about it. The Jewish people, they suffered the Holocaust, and then since the end of World War II, they are still receiving money, reparations. And then there was also a question of reparation for Black Americans, which never happened. And then therefore, it is about time to engage that conversation on the global level. That's why the Accra conference was very significant, very important.
What other justification for reparations would you like to see highlighted besides the ones already mentioned at the Accra Reparations Conference?
We are thinking about a better world, and then we are thinking about the decolonization of the international financial and economic system. And reparation as a mechanism that is going to bring like a more human face to the way business is conducted is going to contribute to that decolonization of the financial and the economic system in the world. This is one of the reasons why somebody like me, I am supporting reparation, because we want a world of justice. We want economic and social justice in the world.
Right.
It's not just because the people of African descent, the Africans have suffered, they deserve reparation. We agree. This is what we said. But because we know there's a bigger purpose, it is about the renewal of the world. It is about bringing justice and economic justice and social justice in the world. So when Africans and the people of African descent get reparation, this is going to contribute to the restoration of the world. Another reason is that if when reparations is done to the Africans and the people of African descent, this can somehow prevent some other eventual or potential systems of oppression that the Europeans or some other ones may conceive to try and subdue the Africans. So these are all the reasons why we are thinking about the importance of reparations.
You mentioned the decolonization of the global financial order. Now,
yes.
Finance is very important. African countries have been known to not handle finances very well, especially when it comes to economy. Some people are of the view and have actually criticized Africa's and the Black diaspora's calls for reparations on the grounds of rampant corruption and economic mismanagement by respective African governments. What do you say to that?
I'm familiar with that conversation. And then many years ago when I was in Ivory Coast, I was a journalist, and then also I was involved in a social movement called Jubilee 2000 Coalition. It was launched by a number of Europeans, and they wanted the cancellation of poor countries' debts. And then, so I was, the first Ivorian, I was the Ivorian president of the national chapter, and then I spoke to leaders of the opposition, and I said, you know what, let's rally around the cause for the cancellation of poor countries' debt. And then also I spoke to people close to the government. I was writing as a journalist, but supporting democracy. Therefore, I was on the side of the opposition. So I spoke to the people in the opposition and people in power. The people in the opposition, they welcomed the idea, and they were afraid that this could lead to a mass movement that can take them out of power. And the people in the opposition, they rejected the idea because they said, if we do so, and then if the debt of the country is cancelled, the first beneficiaries will be the people in power, who certainly are going to use the money to have more leverage to stay in power, or who are going to do money embezzlement. So, of course, you can imagine my task and the task of those who were working with me was very, very difficult. And then as I was talking to one of the leaders of the opposition, and I told him, so have you thought about the idea about the possibility that the cancellation of Ivory Coast debt coincides with your rise to power? And then, so what would you say? And the person could not answer. And it did happen. Laurent Gbagbo became president in 2000, and then immediately they engaged for some negotiation with the financial institution, so that the Ivory Coast debt can be cancelled or can be reduced. So my point is that there are some issues around which we can rally. We may want to have power, and then we may want to remain in power. But the question of African countries' debt or the question of the Caribbean countries' debt should be around issues which we can build a consensus if we want in order to survive in this world. So if people are really organized and then they somehow succeed in getting reparation, because they have been there in the struggle, therefore they have the right to sit at the table or to have an eye about how the money is going to be shared, how the money is going to be used. So I'm not afraid about that. I think that people should transcend that and make sure that we get reparation, and at the same time that whatever thing that we get be done in a sense of fairness.
Thanks for your response, Professor Gnaka Lagoké. There's those not in favor of reparations payment who believe instead of giving cash, money could be invested in long-term projects that will have extended benefits. What's your opinion on that? And can you share examples?
I don't have any problem. For me, I want cash and I want long-term projects and I want many other things. And then when I talk about reparation, one thing that I discussed, which I mentioned briefly during the conference,
right,
is that we need to engage those corporations in Africa. Many of them are benefiting from that neoliberal economic system. Many of them are engaged in some neo-colonial activities. Many of them are engaged in some mal-corporate practices, and many of them inherited some wealth from slavery, from colonialism. So for me, when we put together like a global movement for reparation, there should be a particular campaign that is going to target those multinationals in Africa that are doing fiscal flight, money embezzlement, that do not pay their taxes,
right,
and then still, and that are benefiting from all these things. These companies should be engaged so that they too can be converted to the conversation about reparation. I call that because I am one of the people who are promoting that, but many people they wrote about that in South Africa, which is the Ubuntu Corporate Social Responsibility. Because you can engage in doing corporate social responsibility, but from the neoliberal worldview. And you can do a corporate social responsibility from the spirit of Ubuntu, from the lenses of Ubuntu, which will put more emphasis on humanism, on humaneness, and then humanness. So for me, as we do that, you see that we can have long-term projects, we can have cash, and we can engage those corporations in embracing that Ubuntu corporate social responsibility. Ubuntu is a civilization, it is a philosophy of the Bantu people in Africa, a group, it's a large family, and then it is about African collectivism, humanness, the values are sharing, compassion, integrity, and so and so. It was promoted by Nelson Mandela, by Thabo Mbeki, by Desmond Tutu, when South Africa became democratic under the leadership of the first president, or the first Black president, Nelson Mandela. So many historians and many researchers have been writing about that, and then I am claiming Ubuntu, and then I'm using it for Africa's integrated development, and I'm using Ubuntu for the new dispensation of Pan-Africanism, and then I am one of the people who think that Ubuntu should be offered to the world as we want a world of justice, a world of shared prosperity, to replace, if need be, capitalism and neoliberalism that have caused so many mass poverty and many damages in the world.
So you concluded with capitalism and neocolonialism. Some people, including yourself, feel even though colonialism or slavery has ended many years ago, there is still an economic order that is a colonial based type of economic order. You praised the president of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, for putting together the Accra Reparations Conference under the auspices of the African Union. Great work done by Her Excellency Amachum Amwa, the ambassador, and Ghana's permanent representative to the African Union in Ethiopia, who also happened to be the conference's secretariat. As we consider everything that happened in Accra and other places as a result of reverberations of the conference, what do you want to see happen before the next reparations conference, wherever it happens?
One of the things that we saw in Accra, that was a conference I wanted to attend. It was a very important moment, like I said, so that I can have the opportunities to talk about the new disposition of Pan-Africanism, about the Ubuntu philosophy, and how to contribute to the linking of reparations and Pan-Africanism. But one thing that I saw, which was so beautiful, those groups, various groups of people of African descent, and people, the spirit was cordial. There was a sense of brotherhood. Of course, we could have been like a deeper communion or harmony, but somehow we saw the Caribbeans, we saw the Africans, we saw the Afro-Europeans, and we saw the African Americans. So that was the positive element. That's one of the few times I saw all those groups coming together about a question like reparation. So the conversation continues. And then the interview that we're having, I know many like Dr. Chenzira Davis, then Ron Daniels, Hilary Brown. I've seen many of them, having conversation, because Accra gave us the beginning. Accra sparked, the conversation, for the conversation to become more popular. So each one of us, we take it in our respective areas to make it so popular that many people can say, it is important to engage, to have that conversation. This is what we are doing. The next things, I will talk about that in a few, but as the chairman of the scientific committee of the 9th Pan-African Congress, that is supposed to be held in Togo in October, from October 22nd to October 25th, 2024, which is also an initiative launched by Togo, supported by many countries like South Africa, endorsed by the African Union. It was decided that 6 regional preparatory conferences be organized. Right now, I'm in South Africa for the first one, which took place December 4, December 5, 2023. The next one is going to be in Brazil. And then we are thinking about having a conversation around reparation. So the theme should be remembrance, restitution, reparations, and reconstruction. So some of the people that we met in Accra will be there. The conference is not going to bring together more than 200 people, or maybe 100 or so. So the most prominent figures who were in Accra, and some who were not in Accra, who are involved in the debate about the redemption of Africanist people, and then those who are engaged in the conversation about reparation will be in Brazil. It's going to be February 26th to the 27th, 2024. So that you can see. And then during the May 9th Pan-African Congress, there will be a commission with the same theme, reparation and 6th region, to engage the conversation about reparation and about the 6th region. So this is the plan that I have around the Pan-African Congress that we're doing beside the interviews that I will give, beside the interviews that many of us will be giving about the question of reparation.
Excellent, excellent. You mentioned the fact that you were really excited to see Africans come from all over the continent and all over the world, indeed, under one umbrella in Ghana, with a united and cordial spirit to charter a cause that many Black people globally are very passionate about. Now, what are some of the things or ways that Africa and Africans must seriously consider when the topic of African unity is mentioned? Because a united Africa is very important for the movement of the continent forward and the movement of Black people all over. Some people are of the opinion that it's not possible, and others strongly believe they will see a united Africa in this dispensation and in their lifetime. What do you say to that?
Yeah. So one of the things that we notice is that there is I will talk about it. There is a kind of competitions like among those various groups and individuals in general. And what I notice that there is a lack of coordination in the Pan-African world. I can say that, or it is a limited coordination. And then people like to work in clusters. And then also because of all those elements. So my point is that we need to seize the opportunity of the Ghanaian initiative, the Togolese initiative, of the South African initiative, because I have heard that South Africa is also going to launch another, can we say campaign, another project, which is going to be about the second decade of the Agenda 2063. As you know, in the history of Africa, when the Organization of African Unity was created, there were some major continental plans adopted by African head of state. The Lagos Plan of Action in 1980, the Treaty of Abuja in 1991, NEPAD 2003, and then Agenda 2063 in 2013. And then the 2013 embedded in the African Renaissance dialogue, talking about Ubuntu, even though Ubuntu is not referred to in the official document of the Agenda 2063, but the Agenda 2063 put emphasis on Pan-Africanism contrary to the previous continental plans. So South Africa is going to launch the second decade of the Agenda 2063. So we can see that these initiatives are taken by those African leaders or African countries. We may have dissensions with them, but around those initiatives, we can be rally and seize the opportunity to bring more unity in the midst of all those who are fighting for the unity of Africa. Because our credibility depends on but on the possibility of working together as one. So the second thing that I saw in Accra is that people were, we saw that there were like different, it was so interesting to see that when the Caribbeans were talking, of course, they were saying how much, they work hard, for reparation and so and so. When the African Americans were talking, they were putting emphasis on like, the traditions of struggles, the work that they did. And then there was some impression that the African countries were not particularly involved in the conversation about reparation. And then Akwesi, the Honorable Akwesi Ababio, who is the head of the Department of Diaspora Department in the Office of the President of Ghana, and then Brian Kakoro, who works with Open Society, who is from Zimbabwe. Somehow they did rectify that in 1993, there was a conference on reparation under the leadership of Abiola, and there was also another conference on reparation in Ghana, 1999, and then there was, I think, another one in 2000, something like that. So you can see that there is a need to give the actual information about reparation from a comprehensive and global perspective.
Right.
And then if I have time, that will be working on that, so that when people talk about reparation, we don't think that it is only one region that is doing more work than the others, or that some have done it and it looks like it was lost in oblivion, and some have done it in a sustained way, like the people from the Caribbean, and some who have done it in America, even though we have the feeling that there is no too much success in the past, but today the issue of reparation in the United States is gaining traction and momentum. So number two, we need to make sure that even the people who are engaged in the debate, have the information that they need to share with others who are not involved in the debate. So In other words, each one of us, we need to do what? Our homework. That's point number 2. And then point number 3 now, we need to use every means at our disposal to make sure that Pan-Africanism be the conversation, that reparation be the conversation, that the cancellation of poor countries that be the conversation. And then we need to push those Europeans, because it is about time for the world to embrace like a new dispensation, because we cannot continue like that with exploitation, that injustices, and it is time for people to think about an alternative, and that's what we will try to do.
Thank you for talking to us here on hashtag The African Dream, Professor Gnaka Lagoké. Your points have been very well articulated, and we appreciate your time and expertise. Any final words, briefly?
Okay, thank you very much, Ofori, for the opportunity, and then for what you did in Ghana when I was speaking. The fact that you recorded that video, it was like a big surprise to me, and it was so well done that I have like a professional video about my presentation. Of course, the official, the other media did it, but I have not seen it, so I don't know if it is as good as yours. So I just wanted to
Hopefully
thank
it's better than mine.
Okay, so that's the point, the first element. The second element, we are engaged in the battle for the soul of Africa, the battle of ideas, the battle of identity. So any idea, any concept that we can use to claim our common identity, and then our battle for our own survival, like Pan-Africanism or reparations, we have to be engaged in it. We have to support those ideas. And yes, our leaders, many at times have failed us, but anytime they do the right thing, we have to be there to support them. That is my position. So we have to support South Africa when South Africa launches the second decade of the Agenda 2063. We have to support the Ghanaian government under the leadership of Nana Akufo-Addo, who will be certainly gone. But there will be a next president, hopefully, who's going to continue this conversation. We need to rally around Ghana and around the African Union so that the question of reparation becomes very, very popular in the world. And then we have to support the Togolese government that is promoting that non-Pan-African Congress. And then the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Togo, His Excellency Professor Robert Dussé, is the one who appointed me as the chairman of the scientific committee for the Non-Pan-African Congress to be held in Togo, October 22nd to October the 25th, 2024. And then there are a series of preparatory conferences. The one in South Africa just ended. It took place from December the 4th to December the 5th under the topic of science, under the topic of science and Pan-Africanism, and then education and innovation. And then the next one is going to take place in Brazil, February 26, 2027 or 2024. So we want people to pay attention to what we will be doing, and then to support the initiative of the Pan-African Congress, so that we can make sure that that particular movement can be the reflection and the illustration of our energy, our desire to bring change, like in the history of Africa and the history of people of African descent.